Okay, I hope I'm audible to all my students who are attending this particular lesson for the Cambridge International AS Economics course. In this particular lesson, I'm going to start with a new concept within the macroeconomy module. This is the circular flow of income. Okay. If students can recall that in the previous lessons, we have been talking about national income statistics, which was the first topic within the macroeconomy module. We have talked about the concept of gross domestic product, gross national income, gross national disposable income. We have also talked about the three approaches to measuring GDP, which are namely the product approach, the income approach, and the expenditure approach. Okay, so we have been discussing all this in the previous lesson. Now we are going to look at the diagrammatic representation of the interaction between firms, households, the government, etc. And that diagrammatic representation of the interaction between them is called the circular flow of income. Okay, so it's going to be a very interesting and short lesson. All students who are attending this online lesson, make sure that you have something to write, because I'm going to make you write some notes which are going to be immensely helpful in summing up the whole lesson. Okay, so let's quickly start with the discussion of circular flow of income in this particular lesson. So I am just writing the main heading for completeness. This is Cambridge International Education, AS Economics course. Okay. And the main module we are exploring is the macroeconomy. Okay. And within this module, we are looking at the circular flow of income. The circular flow of income. Okay. So let's quickly, first of all, understand what does the circular flow of income model show. So I can say that the circular flow of income model, the circular flow of income model shows how the income, spending, how the income, spending, and output move around an economy. How they move around an economy. So the circular flow of income diagram is basically telling us how actually in macroeconomics the three terms are pretty much equal, because whatever output is produced will generate equivalent amount of income. Okay, and whatever income is produced in the economy will then be spent on buying that output. Okay, so I can make a diagram. I can make a diagram indicating the simplest model of circular flow of income. Whatever output is produced in the economy generates equivalent amount of income, which in turn generates equivalent amount of expenditure, assuming that there are no savings in the economy. So whatever you are earning, you are spending the entire income on buying that out. So it's like a circular flow. So I can erase the initial portion off and I can write that the diagram below shows the simplest model. The diagram below shows the simplest model of the circular flow of income. It shows the simplest model of the circular flow of income. The model shows that output generates Output generates income, which is then spent on the output, which is then spent on the output. Output in the economy will generate income, and that income will then be spent on the output. This flow explains why GDP can be measured, by calculating the country's output, income, and expenditure. This flow explains why you can measure GDP to calculate the economy's output, income, expenditure. That is why students can recall that in the previous lesson, we were measuring GDP using the three approaches, because the GDP calculated using the output approach, the income approach, and the expenditure approach should theoretically be equal. Because whatever output is produced in the economy generates an equivalent amount of income, which is then spent entirely on buying that out. So this is a simplified circular flow model. Okay, now let's understand, first of all, let's understand before digging deeper into the topic, what is an open economy, what is a closed economy. Let's quickly discuss that. And then let's look at a circular flow diagram in a closed economy. Okay, so I'm erasing all this off. Let's look at difference between open and closed economy. So I can write open economy versus closed economy. Open economy versus closed economy. Okay, so I can write an open economy. An open economy is an economy that takes part in international trade. An open economy is an economy that takes part in international trade. In contrast, a closed economy is the one that does not export or import goods and services. Okay, so open economy is that economy which is interacting with the rest of the world in terms of exporting or importing goods or services. But when you talk about a closed economy is not interacting with the rest of the world. That means a closed economy is does not export and it does not import any good or service. Okay, so in today's world, no economy is actually a totally closed economy. Every economy usually is opened up for trade with the rest of the world. Okay, so let's first of all look at what is going to be the circular flow diagram in a closed economy, which is not interacting with the rest of the world. Okay, so let's look at, let me erase all this off and I can write circular flow in a closed economy. Circular flow in a closed economy. Okay, let me draw a simple diagram which shows the interaction between, there are two sectors. we have the households and we have the firms. So households and firms. What do households do? Households provide factor services. Households are going to provide factor services, which are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship skills. Households provide land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship skills to the firms. Let me write firms with a gap. Households provide these factor services to the firms. Okay. What do firms do in return? Firms pay for these factor services. So firms are going to pay factor payments to the households. Firms are going to make factor payments to the households. These factor payments include rent on land, wages paid to labor, interest paid on capital, and profits paid to the entrepreneur. These factor payments are made by firms to the households. Okay, what do firms do with these factor services? When firms hire land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship skills, firms make goods and services. These goods and services are then sold to the household. So I can write firms make goods and services. These goods and services are then sold to the households, and households are not buying these goods and services for free. What do households do? Households spend on these goods and services. They buy from the firms. That means this is consumption expenditure here, which comes in between. So I can write households make consumption expenditure. Consumption, let me write it more clearly so that students can properly see this. Consumption expenditure. Households make consumption expenditure on the goods and services bought from the firms. Okay, so I'm repeating the circular flow diagram again. Okay, first of all, households provide factor services, which are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship skills to the firms. Firms pay for these factor services in the form of rent to land, wages to labor, interest on capital, and profits to the entrepreneur. Okay. Firms use these factor services to make goods and services. These goods and services are then sold to the households. Households spend on these goods and services using their factor incomes. That means whatever households are going to earn from rent, wages, interest, and profits, that money will be used by the households to buy goods and services from the firms. Okay, so I can write an easy explanation. The above diagram shows the circular flow in a closed economy. It shows the circular flow in a closed economy. Okay, the inner circle, or I can say, I can make the red arrows. So this, and then this, and this, the red arrows. I can write that the red arrows show the real flow. It shows the real flow of products and factor services. And now the green arrows. The green arrow students can see. And the green arrows show the money flow of spending and incomes. It shows the money flow of spending and incomes. Students can clearly see that the red arrows do not denote any money getting transferred. The red arrows only denote the real flow, which means flow of factor services from households to firms, flow of goods and services from firms to households. The green arrows involve money. That is why they are called money. Firms pay to the households in the form of rent, wages, interest, and profits. They involve money, and households spend money in the form of consumption expenditure. So the green arrows denote money flow. The red arrows denote real. Okay, so hoping all students have understood this. I stop in this particular lesson. It was a short lesson where the objective was to introduce all students to the circular flow, the simple circular flow model, and the circular flow model in a closed economy. In the next lesson, we are going to talk about circular flow of income in an open economy. We are going to talk about circular flow of income in an open economy in the next lesson. I stop in this lesson. I hope students have enjoyed this lesson. Any doubts? You can unmute your mic and ask, or you can get in touch with me for doubts on call or WhatsApp, or you can mail me your doubts at divineschoolof economics@gmail.com. This is where I stop in this lesson.